Welcome to the Empowered Women Life Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bashford. This podcast is for every woman who has ever felt limited by her past, silenced by trauma, or held back by society's expectations. Each week, we will share powerful stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you become the leader of your own life. Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. My guest is Marie Fraser, and she is the intermittent fasting expert, as far as I'm concerned, because she knows far more about intermittent fasting than I do. But I'm also realistic enough to know that most people would see intermittent fasting as I wouldn't say a fad, but just an excuse. Because from what I understand from you, it doesn't involve calorie counting and things like that. And that's what we know about dieting, especially women for dieting. So tell me, Maria, a bit about you as a person and why you become involved in intermittent fasting.
Okay. Hi, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here chatting with you. As a person, I'm a mum to two young men. I am a coach for women. I have various certifications on that. And my values are freedom and fun and courage and things and authenticity. I like to enjoy life. But why am I an intermittent fasting coach? Let's get down to the nitty gritty. I got to the point during my menopause where the weight just would not shift. And no matter how little I ate, how many calories I counted, how much exercise I did, my clothes were just getting tighter and tighter. And also, I have an arthritic knee, and all that extra weight was, playing havoc on my joints. And when you've got one wonky knee, after a while the other knee starts to become wonky as well. But I think the real wake-up call for me was I went to my doctor for just like an annual blood test checkup, etc., to be told that I was pre-diabetic, obese, my cholesterol was too high, my blood pressure was too high, and they sent me off with all these leaflets. And I just thought, this is not going to work for me because what I've done in the past hasn't worked for me. And so I was pretty miserable. So that's when I started researching and looking for alternative ways to drop this weight. It wasn't something that I was looking to do overnight because let's face it, it'd take me quite a few years to build up this obesity. And so realistically, I knew I wasn't going to drop it quickly, but I wanted, most importantly, because of my age, I wanted to drop it healthily. And that's when I found intermittent fasting. And I just bought the book and started to do it. And I thought, wow, this is all right. The first few days weren't easy, but I wasn't hungry, I wasn't frustrated, and I wasn't bored, which I think is what happens in a lot of, in inverted commas, diets. And the weight just started to come off. I refused to stand on the scales. I know, now I have clients who are standing on the scales every day, and I say, oh, that's not really a good move. Once a week, if you must. But I was just so impressed how I, reversed my pre-diabetes after several months, and my blood pressure went back to normal. Well, it's normal for a 60-plus-year-old woman. It's not like it was when I was in my 30s and 40s, but for my age, it's certainly good. My cholesterol is down to normal. And of course, I'm not carrying, I suppose I could have been, you could say I've been carrying around 3 bags of shopping with me. Just if I could imagine walking around carrying 3 bags of shopping, that is the weight that I actually dropped. And I was so impressed with my results. And okay, a lot of it is mindset and you want to be determined to do it. But I think sort of being easier than anything else I'd ever done, it sort of gives you motivation to carry on. Look, everything's an up and down, and there are good days and not so good days. But I was still motivated when I was having a not so good day. It didn't, the last thing on my mind was giving up. So, because I was so impressed, I then decided to train to teach other women because I'd got friends, I'd spoken to every woman of my age, menopausal, postmenopausal, was not happy with her weight or the way that she looked. And I just thought, this has been so easy and good for me. My sort of mental clarity, my energy, vitality, just shot through the roof. And I thought, I want this for every woman who is walking in the shoes I was walking in before before I'm where I am now. So is that a long way of telling you how I got there?
It's great. It highlights a lot of the issues that I think most women of the more mature age, should we say, who are menopausal or postmenopausal, have faced or are facing, in the sense of, we know it's harder to lose weight as we get older.
Yeah.
I can remember being a lot younger and just going, oh, I'm going to just diet this week. And I could literally practically stop eating and have no trouble at all. And the weight would just fall off.
Mm.
But I'm very aware now that mid-60s, there are big issues. I do carry that tire around my middle. Yeah. And I wouldn't say I've accepted it, but it's a reality that I've had to face, and I don't like it. Mm. But I'm not about to say, oh, God, Karen, you're atrocious, because that doesn't serve me at all. But at the same time, obviously, I want to do something about it for health reasons, if nothing else. Yes, it'd be nice to be that beautiful, slim person again, but that's going to take some time, I think. But hey, but for me, it's more about the health aspects, because, as you say, carrying these bags of sugar or food around unnecessarily is putting an awful strain on the body.
Yeah, huge.
So how would you say to somebody, what would you say to somebody faced with the same situation that, say, I am in, where you've got this extra tire around the middle? How would you suggest starting?
I mean, you mentioned earlier about sort of intermittent fasting. Is it some kind of fad? And it absolutely isn't, because evolutionarily wise, we've been fasting for millennia. Because in the caveman days, when we were hunter gatherers, we weren't having 3 meals a day. We weren't sitting down to 3 meals a day. We had to go out and kill it, bring it back, cook it, and whatever. And so there was like that sort of feast or famine cycle. And so the body is so fantastic. And, I do believe we still carry that genetic profile from our caveman days, that we were storing that glucose, that fat, for the times when we're not actually feasting. So, for example, these days we're eating 3 meals a day, we're snacking in between. And the biggest problem is the sugar that people are taking in. Everything is loaded with sugar. If you can look to the natural sugar, we burn that much quicker. But all the, in inverted commas, ultra processed food, the fast foods, I want a quick meal from Marks and Spencer, so I'll get a chicken korma and these types of ultra processed foods, apart from the fact they're loaded with chemicals, they're also loaded with sugar, which make them addictive. And the body is a bit like a hybrid car. So once you've taken in your food, your body converts it into glucose, which is sugar, and it will use that sugar, glucose, for energy, to do what you're doing. And your brain loves glucose, for example. But what happens is we're not using all the sugar that we've ingested, and that excess sugar turns to fat. And it goes far away from your organs as possible, because it's detrimental to have all that fat around your organs. So it'll go on your, on your tummy, on your backside, on your arms and your face, etc., etc. So basically, for people starting out in fasting, is to look at, are they addicted to sugar, and how we can bring that down, because sugar is incredibly addictive. What I do with clients is to look at their lifestyle and what's important to them. What foods can they not live without? What is their diet? What is their daily diet? And with regard to having an eating window and a fasting window, every client is different in that, some people might. I have one client who needs to eat in the morning. If she doesn't have something to eat within a few hours of waking, she feels nauseous. So her eating window is from 6 till 12, whereas other clients want to eat with their family in the evening. So their eating window is, say from 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon till 7, 8 o'clock at night. I'm not quite sure whether I've answered your question, because I've got excited.
No. You've certainly clarified for me what intermittent fasting is about. Also, as I asked, it was what would you do to start? And your comment was, what are you addicted to, basically?
Yeah.
I don't ingest much sugar anymore, simply because I now find that when I do take refined sugar, I get chronic cramp, because my body is so unused to it now.
Yeah.
That it's like I've basically poisoned it with it.
Yeah.
So my sugar is honey, Jagged sugar, which is pure sugar cane that's been dried. But that's full of protein, it's full of natural minerals, it's got fiber in it, but it's not got that really high sweet sugar hit.
Yeah.
And you don't need very much of it at all. Yeah. It's more a case of I'm using it, say, if I make a homemade cake, I have to have sugar in it to be able to get it to work, to make it a cake. That's the only reason I'm using it. I do not use sugar on any of my food, any cereals or anything like that. I don't even buy cereals from the supermarket. It's oats and nothing else. For me, the change would be more about the window time and recognizing when I'm craving something. Like, I adore bread, but I also know that bread does not like me. I suppose it's knowing those kinds of things that would make a difference to how successful your weight loss could be, or even how impactful choosing to go onto intermittent fasting would be. Because, as you say, our bodies are used to it from when we were cave people.
Yeah.
And we don't lose that knowledge, because we know that we can change a mindset potentially in 30 days, longer, depending on what it's involving. But why would our body suddenly change from something that served it all this time, simply because we've created food that is high sugar, highly processed, full of chemicals?
Yeah.
So on that basis, if we then start to remove the processed food, remove the sugars and the chemicals, and start going back to natural, is that part of the process of going on into intermittent fasting?
It is the way that I work. I mean, there's absolutely no what I would call deprivation at all. We start to look at natural, wholesome foods. So we would be getting our carbohydrates from vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, all the cruciferous vegetables and things like that. Absolutely avoiding, any ultra processed foods at all, because apart from the chemicals, I just want to touch back on the chemicals that are in processed foods. And it's like, I really urge people to look at the labels on a food product, because quite frankly, if there's any more than 7, the majority of it will be chemicals. No, it's true. I mean, and also if you can't pronounce it, it's definitely a chemical.
They can't pronounce half the stuff
Yeah,
they write on the back of labels.
exactly. And you know, when you're supermarket shopping, stick to the outer ring of the supermarket because that's where the freshest food is.
Hmm.
You know, once you start to get into the middle, then you know there's all the tin stuff, all the jars and jars of various sauces. Do you know what I mean? You just
Yeah.
think I've looked at levels and think, my God, what on earth is in that? You know, and you just envisage this factory. You know, there's no human touch at all. There's just this factory producing this stuff, and you know these chemicals are also known as obesogens because they are making us fat.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes. And so that's why ultra processed foods are absolutely off the table because you know, nobody knows at this moment in time what the long-term side effects are of these obesogens. I mean, you know, there's not enough research, but there is research out there. I don't think there's enough research yet about, you know, the big C, and some of them are carcinogenic, etc., etc. Yet there's, you know, gone are the days where we go and buy food because we think it's healthy for us. The big food manufacturers, in my opinion, are on a par with tobacco companies.
Hmm.
They do not care about us being healthy because on the other hand they're also in bed with the pharmaceutical companies, so it's all money, it's all profit and the bottom line, and that might sound a bit radical but that's how I actually feel about this ultra processed food situation that we have.
I'd be inclined to agree with you on that basis, especially about the sort of connection between pharmaceuticals and the food industry. But what concerns me is the fact that we have sufficient food to be able to eat a healthy lifestyle requirement without all the added extras. It's simply because we've gradually been brainwaved over the years of, oh, look, there's another product here that's going to fill you up, or it's tasty, or whatever. We've not stuck to what, to me, is a healthy diet, in that we go by what it tastes like naturally.
Yeah, I agree.
I love salad, absolutely love salad. And the more salad I have, the happier I am, simply because there's this taste to it that you will not get from processed food, or even food that's been, things like cheese, that's still processed. If you can go for more of a natural cheese, like, I don't know, feta cheese, even though it's processed, it's got a totally different taste to cheddar cheese, because it's not as processed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, we've lost that ability to taste things realistically, haven't we?
Well, you know, that leads to a question. Are people mindful of what they're eating?
No, definitely.
I actually don't think they are. I mean, it's quite interesting. I can't walk and eat. I can't walk and drink.
No, I can't either.
I have to sit down. Even if I'm on a park bench, I have to sit down
and
eat, you know, the sandwich or whatever. And I have this vision that people are just putting things into their mouths and they've no idea what it is because they're either on the phone at the same time or, you know, they're rushing to get somewhere else and what have you. And, you know, you wouldn't do that with your car.
No.
You know, you'd give it a break. You don't expect your car to go 24/7. You'd give it a break. You'd fill it up with the right petrol to make it perform better and give it a service. Yet we don't seem to be doing that with our own bodies. And I guess both you and I are on this sort of mission, you know, for women especially, because you know we've got so many other things on our plate, is to take time for ourselves and our bodies, because it's the only vessel that we've got. We don't have another one, and don't leave it until it's too late. to then think, a bit like me with my pre-diabetes. That was my wake-up call. I mean, that was quite mild, but don't wait until it's something more serious before you start to, really pay attention.
The thing about the body is it has a habit of communicating with us. But I think most people do not even consider listening to the body. And then they're shocked to discover they have a health issue that's been building and building and building and has reached that point. As we know, the big C is a prime example. There would have been warning signs to say, oi, I'm trying to tell you something. Please listen to me. Even a common cold is a warning sign that your immune system is not coping.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet, women especially are so focused on giving that they forget about giving to themselves more often than not. And yes, they want to do the best for their family, but how are they going to do the best for their family if they can't look after themselves or reach a point where they're literally relying on the family to keep them going?
Yeah.
Because they've reached that point of no return, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
So
no, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's I don't know, tragic, is that the word? The societal condition of women and their inability to say no. It really makes me sad because when everybody else says no, women will just go, oh, okay.
Yeah, I used to do that.
I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, this is a true story about me, for me personally. My youngest son was diagnosed with cerebral palsy when he was 12 months old. And, that was the worst day of my life. And I probably was a few months later. I suddenly woke up one day and I thought, right, I have to be on my A game. I have to be number one in this family. Because if I'm not there at the top and being able to help everybody, then nobody else is going to do it. And it was all, people thought I was being a bit selfish, saying, well, it doesn't suit me to do that. I can't do that. No, sorry, etc., etc. I can do it another time. I can't do it now. And it was really interesting, the sort of frowns and mutterings. And I just thought, no, I have to be the most important person in my circle now. Otherwise, everything else is just going to fall down and I'm going to be ill. And that's exactly what, you're referring to. And I just wish women could even just take that one step, small change. Because once you start building that momentum.
My story is a prime example. A nervous breakdown thanks to my family just totally ignoring my needs when I was emotionally supporting my mother for 20, 30 years. There was no emotional support from my family at all. I was always the one there for my mother, but I ignored my own needs. And consequently, in 2023, a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Luckily, that with what I know about the body and such, like, I could heal myself quite rapidly.
Yeah.
But I now recognize that I had so many warning signs leading up to that. But I was the giver. I was always the giver. I never received. Even my mother could not give to me in the way that I needed to be able to keep giving to her. And it reached that point where I literally just turned around and said, I just can't give anymore. And my body went, no, you're not. I'm just stopping you dead in your tracks. And that's what it did.
Yeah.
And yet for women, it's almost like we don't give ourselves permission to recognize we are human beings, not robots.
And no, exactly. We have our own needs, and this idea that we're being selfish, and women feel guilt. It needs to stop.
Absolutely.
It really does.
And the recognition is, if you look at a woman's body, based on what she's been giving and giving and giving, her body will reflect that. Because then we're not looking after ourselves. My spare tire is partly because I kept giving to my mother.
Yeah.
And I wasn't looking after myself. I knew what I had to do, but I still wasn't doing it. And yet our bodies have this wonderful ability to know what it needs, which is why I'm thrilled to be able to have you come on this podcast and share about intermittent fasting, because that is what our body knows. Now, I've done all those diets. I know how ineffective they can be, in the sense of you can lose the weight, but you can guarantee you'll put it back on. It might be a couple of years later, but you will put it back on. Whereas from understanding intermittent fasting, and I will say here that I am going to be participating in Maria's intermittent fasting program. So I may well bring you back so we can discuss from my perspective how beneficial I know it's going to be, but actually having been through it, how beneficial it is. Because my whole mission is to enable women to take responsibility for themselves rather than giving the responsibility away all the time to medical professionals, food manufacturers, and everything else, is to actually take back the responsibility of their own health.
Yeah. And I think for me, that's what the beauty of intermittent fasting is. You're taking back control. Because you're making informed choices, and it's quite remarkable. Even after a couple of weeks, your body will almost reject food that it doesn't suit. Your tummy will start to gurgle or something like that. No, honestly, or you might get gripes. I mean, that happened to me. I would get gripes in my tummy when I'd had something. I thought, yeah, okay, we're not going back down that path, because, as you say, your body tells you. The fact that you've got gripes, it's not wind, and it's not nerves. It's actually what you've just ingested saying, no, that doesn't work for me. So yeah, that's what I love about it, because if you listen to your body, it will, as you say, it will give you signs. And when you're sleeping like a baby, when you're feeling really clear and focused in your mind, this is all the good fuel that you're putting into your body, and also releasing all that fat, which also stores a lot of toxins. And this can be something else. I mean, intermittent fasting is a detox. And we need to get rid of the toxins that are already in our bodies, from the atmosphere, from, washing powders. I mean, everything has got a toxic load to it. Living in that environment of toxicity. So, if you've been on the contraceptive pill for years, or you've taken lots and lots of antibiotics, then your gut microbiome's all up the creek, again, which affects your ability to drop the weight. So we look at all that, but at the end of the day, you are in control. You're the one that is making the decisions and choices.
And I think also I should point out here, me being the practical person, if you're eating healthy food, your body doesn't need so much food to start with. So at the end of the day, you are saving yourself money, because you're not buying the snacky food, you're not buying the processed food, you're actually fueling your body in a way that makes it work most effectively.
Yeah.
So exactly. You have more money to treat yourself to luxury things or enjoyable events and such, like, far more, or even that special holiday that you've always wanted. but all your money's gone on the food you've been eating.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you are saving lots of money because, these processed meals, for example, and don't get me wrong, I used to eat them as well. It's not that I'm, holier than thou. I used to eat them, but they cost a fortune. They're absolutely zero nutrition for you. But what they do is they spike your blood sugar the whole time.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're eating natural, vegetables, meat and, whatever it is, if you're vegan or vegetarian or, a meat eater, all these things in the correct proportions, then, first of all, you're stabilizing your blood sugar, you're reducing your insulin resistance, which is then having a knock-on effect on, the major hormones like cortisol and oxytocin. So it's making you feel better. So, and then that has an effect on your sex hormones as well. So it's, from where I am, it's a win-win. So I've gone croaky.
It sounds like the kind of lifestyle that really so many women need to change to, if only for health reasons, not just because it makes them look better and gives them more energy, sleep better and such. So overall, intermittent fasting is something that is going to be a future for women that is going to be beneficial for them, I would suggest.
I honestly believe it is. I honestly believe it is because, we go through this from, perimenopause right through to postmenopause. We go through this hormonal war zone. And, I don't know about you, but I certainly wasn't taught about what my hormones were doing or, what their role was. And, if we've not, if we've had perhaps a difficult menopause and we've carried through into postmenopause, for example, it might be brain fog, it might be hot flashes and things like that. Intermittent fasting can help quite substantially to relieve those symptoms because it's working on on every cell. It's working on all your cells and all your hormones without you realizing it.
On that note, ladies, and any gentlemen that are listening that know ladies that got the spare tire or feel overtired, lacking energy, foggy mind, anything like that, intermittent fasting could well be the answer. And it's better for health, it saves money, and consequently, that's got to be good all round. So thank you, Maria. You will find Maria's information below. And if you want to try intermittent fasting, Maria offers some amazing packages that, for me, I would say are way underpriced, but everyone has their choice for how they want to offer their services. But I certainly am one that's taken advantage of Maria's prices and her wonderful knowledge and experience, because I want to be healthy and I want to live a long time. So Maria, thank you very much for your time today. Gratefully appreciated.
Thank you, Karen. It's been a pleasure.